Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros, you know. I like to welcome everybody to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discover the show or discover the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Yeah, cowabunga do, you know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
Oh, damn.
Now you got nothing.
Sexiest man alive, third runner-up. Fire. I'd hate to see the two above you.
I think that year it was Ben Stiller was one of the ones above him.
2006 Time Magazine Person of the Year. Fantastic.
It's a proven fact, though.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
I like being a bit of a smart ass. If you look up the 2006 Time Magazine Person of the Year, it just has a finger pointing and it says you. So it's hokey, but it's an undeniable truth.
Hey, man.
So, you know what I mean?
You should get that framed.
You know what? That's not a bad idea.
That should be behind you on your little backdrop.
I like that idea.
What kind of guitar you have?
Just a simple acoustic. I don't even remember what kind it is.
All right. You guys hear me now?
Yeah, man.
Yes. And your echo's
All
gone.
Right. Good. I turned the wrong knob earlier. That's all it was.
Sound like $1 million.
Well, I wish I had $1 million.
Which is a pretty good song.
Yeah.
So Jason Hollis, we did some research, and there's not a whole lot about you out there. There's a couple interviews that I was able to listen to and some stuff like that. But you are a record producer, you are an artist, you are a nightclub owner.
Yeah.
What kind of tell us a little bit? What's that?
I said fortunately and unfortunately, both.
Well, why don't you give us a little history about yourself so we kind of know what we're getting into here?
Yeah. Are we going? Are we?
Yeah.
Yes,
we've
sir.
been going. We just kind of roll into things. That's how we do it.
Yeah. I 25 years in the music business. My background is artist development and production. So basically, my job for the last 20 years is finding artists from basement bands to coffee houses, and developing them over a course of like 3 to 5 years, and really kind of launching bands. I started my career here in Nashville in '95 at MCA Decca under the great Tony Brown and Mark Wright. And then my mentors then were Frank Liddell and Travis Hill, which are all legends now here in Nashville in the country music world. So I started there, kind of cut my teeth in A&R and production, and around 98, 99, ventured out independently. And, I just don't think that I was really kind of cut out in the world of working for mainstream labels. At the time, being young and full of piss and vinegar, I think the risky elements were kind of a bit more in my wheelhouse. So ventured out in 2001 and really got my first break in around 2005, working with a couple of bands out of Denver, Colorado, The Fray and Rose Hill Drive, helping those bands get deals and production wise. And then my real big break came in 2005, 2006 with a band out of Nashville called the Pink Spiders. And Pink Spiders were a band that I'd been developing here in Nashville. And I was in LA at the time. And the band ended up having a bi-coastal bidding war. So it was one of those things as a young producer or somebody that kind of studies, industry guys, reads books on the music industry, you always kind of want to know what that's like to have a bidding war happen. And they're very rare. And I found myself sitting in between, New York and Los Angeles fighting for a band that we had. And that kind of, that deal went with, it was with Geffen Records. Rick Ocasek produced the first album. And that kind of like really chauffeured me into the business professionally. I spent 10 years of my life working for free, basically, interning, working for minimum wage at a record company, mail rooms, kind of working your way up. But it's a very tough industry to kind of break into. And you have to have the mindset that it's a lifestyle, it's a choice that you're making, and it's going to either go good or it's going to go bad. And I think you have to kind of take the roll with the punches on choosing. The vast majority of everything's not going to go your way, and celebrate the wins when you get them. But after 2006, kind of the doors really started opening up from some of my work with bands I'd done, and Pharrell kind of gave me a second real break into the business. And he'd seen some stuff that we'd worked on packaging wise, and so he brought us in to develop some marketing ideas and some packaging for some young bands that he had. And after that project, it just kind of like opened up, and then I started kind of working with everybody. I tell people that I've been in this business for 25 years. Again, the first 10 years were brutal, just brutal hard work. And the second 10 years, you start taking jobs because they're coming to you, and you put everything into those jobs for, a decade until you really kind of make your name. And then the next 10 years, I think you start kind of picking and choosing on projects that you want. So
it sounds oddly like, and I get guff for comparing everything to this, but it's what I've known for most of my life. It sounds oddly like the time that we've spent in the professional wrestling business, where you spend years developing yourself, years paying your dues, years betting on yourself because nobody else is going to.
Correct.
And if you're not the one believing in yourself, who will? And then you got to spend that time grinding when you finally make it, and take every opportunity that you can and see what you can turn it into.
Yeah.
And quite often in our business, you're turning chicken salad or chicken shit into chicken salad.
Yeah. I think it's really the kind of, it's the same for any industry that you have passion behind, right? Clearly guys like us aren't going and working through corporate ladders and, aiming for C-suite jobs. It's about doing what you love to do and finding passion behind what it is that you're doing, because that really fuels the fire. But I think most importantly is like the mentality that you have to have. You have to learn to just be, I think brutal is probably the best word, not only on yourself, but just with everything that's coming at you, between all the bullshit and discovering what's real, what's not real. But first and foremost, it's really having that mindset and that mentality of getting out and doing the work. And what's interesting, man, I'm sure you guys see this a lot as well, is there's so many young kids that are coming up now that I think they've been raised on instant gratification from all the influencers and thinking that they can go online and post something and then they're automatically famous and that's how it works. And they don't understand clearly what we do about paying your dues. You know, that's a rite of passage. I think in anything that you do in order to like really get in and get good at what you do, that 10,000 hours is real, you know, like I always looked at it as 10 years, you know, like I just had that mentality of like, I'm not quitting. This sucks. I'm not sleeping. You know, I don't think I slept for 4 years at one point. It was just mental, you know, and you go through all of this, you go through this mental cycle. You know, is it worth it? Is it going to happen? Is anything going to happen? Am I going to eat? To like the physical cycle of 20-hour days, 22-hour days, you know, 24-hour days, 36-hour days. And it's not for everybody. And especially like these high risk, high reward businesses, most people don't realize it's 30 years before, you know, you're really seeing the fruits of your labor, you know? And
there's a reason why guys like David Geffen, everybody knows him as an older man. Nobody remembers David Geffen as a young man.
Yeah.
They remember him as an older man because that's when he was successful. That's when everything came to fruition for him.
Well, even if you look at musicians in like the 70s, right? I mean, you always have and you always will have young artists that break through. But the vast majority of all the musicians in the 70s were in their mid 30s before they had hits. And you're talking about grinding, you know, just grinding, brutal grinding until you get that. And I think that, you know, yes, there are people that have early success. I wasn't one of them. In fact, I'm glad that I didn't because, you know, I don't know that I would have ever been ready. I think everything that I went through prepared me for where I'm at now.
I think you muted your mic, Tristan.
Damn it, Tristan.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
We are just not working well today.
Listen. We are not 100% at the moment, but we're getting there. No, what I was trying to say was quite often that early success is what messes people up in the first place. Yeah. So sometimes that's a blessing in disguise to have your success or your fortune or whatever you're dreaming about come a little bit later in life. You're going to appreciate it more. You're going to value it more. You're going to take care of it better.
And you've reached a point in your life where you're more focused on what you're after. When we're young, we don't think about that. We think about, where am I going to go get drunk, get laid? You know, what am I doing? But as we get older, we start to actually put things into perspective and realize that, this is my career. This is my life. I need to make this work.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I was watching the roast of Justin Bieber on Comedy Central, and I think he summed it up really well. He was like, you know, give a kid 125 million and let's see what you do, you know?
Yeah.
They're going to fuck everything up. And there's just something to be said with really having to pay your dues and go through that grind. I mean, there's just something, it builds character, it builds strength, it builds confidence, it builds education within your field. You know, you just know a lot more things. And I wish more people would just really look at like, is this the life that I want? As opposed to the instant gratification of how many likes am I getting? How many video views did this get? Because at the end of the day, you know, a lot of that shit just doesn't translate. It doesn't.
I get real tired of hearing, do you know how many followers I have? Like that matters. Yeah. Like, who cares about your social media profile?
Well, you know,
who are you here?
What's funny?
How many of those people would live and die for you, though? You know what I mean?
Right. How many are bots? You know, how many are bought? But Yeah, and the funny thing is, man, about all that stuff is, if Instagram or Facebook decides they don't like you tomorrow, those followers are gone. You don't
Yeah.
have you don't own that.
Or it's the whole shadow banning thing. It doesn't matter how many followers you have or what kind of content you put out. Nobody's seeing it. If it's not being distributed properly, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So, like my advice even to bands, like young bands that I work with now, it's always like, when you play a show, have an iPad or have a legal pad, have anything where you can go introduce yourself to everybody that's in that room, get their email and get their phone number, so you've got data. So you can direct market to them. You can talk to them directly. So you're not having to go through your social media, because what happens if Instagram shuts down? Like there's so many what ifs. And nowadays, back when I was, when I was starting out, we didn't have internet, so it was all about, you had to get out, you had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You had to go poster. You had to go flyer things up. You had to go out and street market. You had to go out and work. And I think people look now at Instagram, and they're like, well, if I put a post up, everybody sees it and I've done enough work. It's just like,
let me just share this.
We come from an era where if you had a show and you didn't go out and flyer for it, you didn't deserve a crowd. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You won't get a crowd. You don't deserve it because you didn't put the work in for it.
Yeah. And, it's funny because you don't see any of that anymore,
No.
You might see a couple flyers here and there, but it's like, if I were a band right now, and I wanted to get noticed, my ass would be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd have posters on buildings everywhere. I'd be marketing so creatively outside of social media. Social media would just be something for announcements or anything else. But yeah,
what do you think the best way to get your name out there outside of social media is in this day and age?
Well, I guess it depends on what it is that you're going into. But if I were a band, like I said, I would be like back in my day when I was playing in bands and we were here in Nashville, it was all about utilizing Kinkos, to the best of our ability, making the flyers and posters. And then when Kinkos finally came out with that big poster maker, and you could do giant posters, we were utilizing that. I think street marketing is so valuable, and it's so underserved right now, because everybody's moving around. Everybody's, they're walking from club to club. You're out and about. And I think visually, when you can see stuff like that, it starts to cement in, because inevitably people are going to go to the website. They're going to go to your social media. They're going to check you out. But if you're everywhere outside of that bubble that everybody's in on their phones, it's I think probably the best marketing that you can do. You have to be creative, like one of the greatest strategies that I did with one of my buddies in a band. We went to a homeless shelter here in Nashville. This is back in the early 90s. And we just gotten like t-shirts made of our band. So we went to this homeless shelter. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning when everybody comes out of the shelter. We had McDonald's, we had coffee, we had biscuits, and then we had a map. And we were like, it's free biscuits and coffee for everybody. But if anybody wants to do something fun today, we got a t-shirt. Here's the map. This is where we want everybody like located. And you'd be surprised how like everybody was into it. Everybody had a t-shirt. And then by like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, when everybody's going to Music Row or coming off the freeways, all they're seeing is this band's t-shirt everywhere. That made the Tennessean. It made news. And then it also got me from the mail room at MCA DECA up to the president's office going like, did you do that? And I was like, yeah, it's creative marketing. You just got to figure out like how to kind of break through the noise. I mean, everybody's like attached to their phone now, so it's like, there's too much noise there.
I've noticed that a lot of this keeps coming back to you betting on yourself,
100%.
which is a great thing, and that has to start somewhere. And I know your parents owned a record or a music store,
Yeah.
when you were growing up. Like, what do you think that had an impact on you as far as your love on music?
I think it was everything. Number one, like I credit my stepfather for a huge amount of my success. I mean, listen, my love for music started from my father and his record collection, from listening to all the early Beatles and Kinks and Stones, to Janis Joplin and Hendrix and all that. Hearing all that growing up was a big impact on me. You know, we grew up very, very poor, you know, so you have a record player. That's kind of what you do. You listen to music. But I remember, like, when I was like probably like 5, 6, 7, when the Muppet Show really happened, and watching the Muppets and like Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem and seeing Animal and Dr. Teeth and Janice and Zoot and all these guys up there, it was just like
Animal right there.
yeah, I went bananas, you know, and all the special guests they had singing with them, from Elton John, and everybody was up there. And I think that's kind of like when I really fell in love with music, and I became consumed with listening and you know, buying albums and just kind of reading liner notes and seeing who produced what, who wrote what, who was in the band, buying all the magazines. And, you know, this is all the way through, you know, elementary school and middle school. In the back of middle school, I was really heavily into music. You know, I was at a garage band, and my mom started dating the guy that owned the coolest music store in all of the South. And for me, that was a real turning point, because going into the music store and starting to work there, and don't get me wrong, man, like I didn't just have a job. It was like, oh, you want to work in the music store? Okay. Well, you start by cleaning horns in the back room, or cleaning band instruments, or restringing guitars, and you got to work your way onto the floor. I worked my way onto the floor, and, you know, by the time I was in late middle school, early high school, you know, I knew every band in town. I knew all the touring musicians. You know, they came in, and I was working with everyone. Fortunately, my parents, you know, the store was it was one of the biggest stores in the South, and we had great teachers there: guitar teachers, drum teachers, bass teachers. This guy named Herman Jackson taught for our music store for a decade. And his brother, Randy Jackson, who was American Idol Journey bass player, he taught bass at the store before I started working there. But his brother Herman, because I was a drummer, his brother Herman really kind of took me in and not only taught me a lot, but started bringing me around to like Jazz Fest and to different gigs. So by the time I was in high school, I was already hanging out with Chuck Berry and Ray Charles and Alan Toussaint and Dr. John and all these great musicians. So by the end of high school, I was dealing with pro level guys. And I think that was the real turning point. You know, that solidified what I wanted to do. There's no options. I was dedicating my life to music. And from then,
your life almost sounds like you were set up perfectly to get into the music business. Like, you couldn't have that kind of childhood and not become a member, you know, part of the music business. You know,
yeah, I think that there's probably a lot of truth to that. I think more so is just when people find their passion, you know what it is, you know? Right. I mean, I grew up, you know, with a lot of my buddies and who all went to college and did all that stuff. And they used to tell me, they were like, man, I'm so jealous that you know what you want to do. Like, you've always known that you were going to be in music, and I have no fucking clue what I'm going to do. Like, I might just end up in insurance, you know? But I think that it's just, when you find that thing that you absolutely love, and you commit to it, then I just think doors begin opening, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's being set up. I think because there's lots of people that came and went through our music store that never pursued music. Some of them did, but I think for me it was like there's no other choice. There's nothing else I'm going to do.
Yeah, some people just don't have the drive for it. They don't see themselves there. They get complacent and content. And some people, like with a job like that, they might come home, and the moment they're done working, that's when they really go to work, because they're working on their dream. They're learning how to get a hold of producers. They're learning how to play better. They're learning how to promote themselves. They're learning everything they need to do to get in and get noticed.
Yeah.
Some people just want to go home and binge watch TV, you know?
Yeah.
And they're equally as happy.
And yeah, listen, that's fine. You know, there's no knocking anything that anybody does. You know, I think you nailed it though. I think the work starts, you know, when you're done doing the thing that gives you money to allow you to go do what it is that you want to do. I mean,
when the play starts for others, when work starts for people like them, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when I was starting out here in Nashville, it was, I'd get up in the morning, I'd go work at a newspaper here. I worked for a music columnist, and I basically would run errands for this guy. I do that like 3 hours in the day. I'd go to my job. I'd work in the mailroom. I'd get off. I'd go intern. I'd do it like a full internship, you know, 6 or 8 hour stint. Whatever time was left, I was bar backing. When bars closed, I was back at it. You know, they were 20, 22 hour days every day for as long as I can remember, for 10 years. And, you know, like, it's just one of those things. It's a conscious life decision where you just have to go like, am I in or am I out? You know, there's plan A, and that's it, right? Because plan B just distracts from everything that you want to do with plan A. So I think the biggest hurdle is to learn to navigate the losses. You know, the losses there's so many losses in all of this, in this whole road to be successful. It's just all losses, you know? So you have to, like, for me, it was always goal setting. So it was always like, I always had these goals, and then I had all these like 100 micro goals to get to this one big goal. By the time I was done with half of these micro goals, that goal's down here, and then you're setting a bigger goal, you know? So you're just kind of running through it. And you have to celebrate all the wins, you know, if they're little tiny. If a door opens and you meet this producer, or you meet this record label guy, or you meet this attorney, or you meet this band, or you meet this publisher, whatever it might be, you have to celebrate all of that, because the rest of your day is filled with people saying no, you know, not responding to emails. It's brutal, you know. Not everybody's cut out for high risk, high reward.
You're
it's
talking
weird.
about meeting
I
people.
feel like I could go ahead.
You're talking about meeting people and how important meeting people is. I heard a story, and I'm just wondering if you'll grace us with the story a little bit about your first real famous contact when you moved to LA.
Yeah. Johnny Depp. Yeah. It's funny. So I moved to Los Angeles the day after I graduated high school, like the very day after. I moved there with no friends, no family, nothing. And it was basically coming out of the music store. I knew that I wanted to make records. I didn't know how to make records. I mean, I'd been, you know, with my band, and we made demos and we'd done all that stuff, but like making real records, you know, I wanted to get into that. So I moved out to LA, and I lived at Sunset and Larrabee. So my balcony overlooked Tower Records on Sunset Boulevard. So it's a great location. Right down the street from me was a very famous tattoo shop called Tattoo Mania. It was run by Gil Monty at the time. And that's where I would go and just hang out. I'd hang out at the tattoo shop, and they all called me the kid. And so one night they were just like, "Hey, you're hanging out here every day. Just come work here." So I went and worked at the tattoo shop, and man, I tell you what, that place was very famous, and all their clientele were celebrities. So one night I was in, and Jonathan Shaw from the very famous tattoo magazine, he was in from New York. He's been friends with Johnny for decades. And so they came in, and all the guys were in the back, and Johnny and I were sitting out in the tattoo shop, just hanging out. And I had no idea who he was at all. I didn't recognize him. So I'm just shooting the shit and making small talk. And I'm talking about like the movies that I'm watching at the time. It was like the Blues Brothers and Caddyshack. And it was Edward Scissorhands. It's one of my favorite movies at the time. And I'm talking to him about that, and he just kind of played it off. And I think that through our conversation, he took that as just like an innocence, of not somebody like I had clearly no idea who he was. And so the next day he came back to the shop, and then we started talking more. And he told me, he was like, "Hey, I'm opening this club across the street. You want to walk over there with me?" So we walked in, and so I got to see the Viper Room basically from the ground up being built, all the way till they painted the outside black and green and put the sign on the door. And that was just like a real invitation for me to kind of see Hollywood in a way that I never thought I could. And again, it's just right place, right time. The cosmic doors opening, but that door opened, and he allowed me in, and I was there every night from night one, from the night it opened until the night after River Phoenix died. And then I kind of stopped going in. But it was cool because like opening night there was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and everybody was there. Like Michael Jackson came in with Elizabeth Taylor, so getting to see all that stuff was wild. I was in there one day when nobody was there. It was me and a buddy sitting at the bar with Shane McGowan from the Pogues, and Shane was drinking pints of vodka. And then he walks up to the stage and just starts playing the piano and singing. And there's me, my buddy, and a bartender, and he's singing. It's like, when do you get to see shit like that? I saw everything there. It was crazy. It was like Lenny Kravitz and the Black Crowes, and I saw Tom Waits with Timothy Leary reading poetry. Just mental. And
It's one of those places that if the walls could talk,
And it was a timestamp. It was a moment in time that, probably will never happen again. There was just so much energy happening at all times. And I got to tag along, and I got to see a lot of things, and hang out with a lot of really interesting people. And
how much of an influence was the Viper Room on the Eighth Room itself now?
Well, I think it was a very big influence, simply because, I think I really never set out to be a bar owner. This room that we're in, the Eighth Room, was previously, it was called Douglas Corner Cafe. And that was a historic music lounge. And it was something that I knew about back in the 90s. Like Tony Brown rushed the stage here and signed Trisha Yearwood. Clint Black was signed here. Big and Rich were formed here. Kentucky Headhunters were signed here. Blake Shelton was signed here. Garth Brooks signed his publishing deal here. George Jones broke somebody's nose on the back deck. The history in this place is just, it's if the walls could talk here. So the Douglas Corner went down during COVID. And that's about the time I moved from Los Angeles back to Nashville. And I live right down the street, and this place was in my walking path. So I'd walk by it every day and just be like, man, what are they going to do? What are they going to do with this place? And was, one day the doors were open and I just walked in. I met the realtors and I just kept coming back and just looking around and listening. I was listening to everything. And one day I heard kind of what the next people were gonna do with the space, and I was like, there's no fucking way. There's no way that we can allow that. There's so much history in Nashville and it's going away. And we have to keep this stage. So I went home that night and that day, and I told my wife, I was like, it looks like we're going to open a bar, and the rest is history. But the Viper Room had a tremendous amount, because I think if you were there in that time period and you kind of witnessed what happened, you look at it and you go like, man, there's no way to recreate that timestamp. But what if we can go in and we can do something that leaves a mark? That we can carry on.
It might end up being a timestamp for someone else. The Viper Room was a timestamp for your life and several other lives, obviously. Yeah. But what if you can do that for another generation? What if you can do that for some kids that's what they do? Now the guy's working in your, bar backing at your place, just watching cool people walk in and out and, learning lessons and learning their life from what you have.
Man, I never thought of that. That's interesting. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I think in any city that you go to, especially one that's growing as fast as Nashville is growing, you tend to lose historical places that really do need to stay around. So for instance, like before the Viper Room was there, man, I can't remember the name of the place before the Viper Room. But it was like it was like Chucky Weiss and the Goddamn Liars would play there every Monday night. It was a watering hole for great talent, from Tom Waits to like Sonny and Cher. So the Viper Room, pre-Viper Room, had a great deal of history, and that's why Johnny went in, was to save that room. And it's interesting because it's kind of like the same story here. And I never thought about us, having a timestamp on other people, but I guess in some ways it has, and it will.
And also in many ways, you're preserving something special for the people who remember it as the Douglas Cafe. Because the thing about this, that's 30 plus years of history in those walls. Now you're saving that history and building your own legacy on top of it as well.
Yeah, it's been interesting, man. When we first came in here and started renovating and doing, because listen, I couldn't buy the rights to Douglas Corner Cafe. He wouldn't sell it, so we had to reinvent this space. You couldn't come in and be like, this is a singer-songwriter venue. You had to do something totally different, and from the style to what's on the stage, everything had to be different. So we had to reinvent this place, and that came with an awful amount of hate. From Hollywood.
Doesn't surprise me.
Hollywood coming to Nashville to change everything. It's like, motherfuckers, I started my career here. I paid my dues. Now we're back investing in the city. So
Nashville doesn't exactly look like Nashville used to anymore. I mean, you look at guys like Post Malone and Jelly Roll.
Yeah.
You never would have considered those guys Nashville 10, 15 years ago. So, I mean, change is hard for some people to accept, but it's inevitable.
Yeah, and I like it. Like I love what Posty's done. His new country album is phenomenal. Jelly Roll is like breaking the mold, and you need rebellious outsider people like that to come in and really shake things up. And that's kind of what I look at myself as, just being the guy, that's in here. I'm not playing to the mold. This is not cookie cutter. I want to do something very different, and I want to find our people. And we found a lot of them, and it's been epic. It's been a lot of fun. It's very different from the music business that I've been in, but you're on a different side of the music business. Now we're buying talent as opposed to, booking or looking for shows. It's different, but you wear the same hats as a producer or somebody that understands branding and marketing very well. You're wearing all those same hats, and then you're wearing the hat of a people person that goes out there and you're talking to everybody, and it's been interesting. It's been a lot of fun, man. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope that we can, leave a mark here and keep this thing running for as long as it can possibly run.
How much of the bones of the old Douglas Corner Cafe? How much of the old bones are there? Did you guys just renovate the building, or did you have to tear things down?
So I used every single piece of material that I could salvage. I've used in the remodeling.
Okay.
So when we came in, it was pretty run down. You're talking 35 years of no upgrades, no improvements. So we really did have to come in and gut, rebuild walls, for security reasons, number one, but basically like on the back deck, every piece of board, weathered board that I could salvage, we've reused. So there's a lot of the Douglas Corner still in here, for sure. A lot of stuff we couldn't salvage. Like for instance, so this is a 100-year-old building. It's all brick, and there's wood beams inside. The wood beams had a those tin roof tiles. So the whole roof was tiled, and there were holes all in the tin roofing. So I started pulling that down, and I got up into the I guess the crawl space above it, and was looking, and I was like, man, look at all of these old beams. This is beautiful. It's like, if we take this roofing down, it opens the building up. It gives it a whole new dimension, and then you're showing these 100-plus-year-old beams. So I used as much as I possibly could, but I tell you, man, it's in the brick. It's in the brick. It's in the ether.
The energy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's got an energy, and we've been able to really carry the flag. So Shinedown was like the first band that we had in here. They played, and after that, it's just been one after another. Like Aldine to Queen was in here the night before they did Bridgestone Arena. So
I've got a family member who is obsessed with Shinedown.
Great.
I'm talking like seeing them in the dozens and dozens of times in concert. Obsessed.
Yeah.
She can't understand why I haven't went with her before, and I'm like, because you're just buying these concert tickets and going all around the Midwest to see them. I never know when the hell you're going.
Yeah. Yeah. Great guys, and cool way to open up a club is have Shinedown come in and play. I think one of the big ones too was Queen was in here the night before they did their Bridgestone Arena show, and it's just, yeah, man, it's been wild, to have the level of celebrities that we have in here on any given night.
You're a club owner, you're a producer, you're a promoter. At one point, you went back to LA and you started creating more things. And from what I remember, one of them being the Netflix Motown Magic children's show. Tell me about that.
Well, that was like that was an interesting project that was brought to me. And for me, like I like probably like all of us, we grew up listening to Motown. Like inevitably Stax, Motown, Sun. And then leading into probably our later lives with A&M, RCA. But Motown was always such a highly influential, Berry Gordy was somebody that I've read every book on, like his work ethic and the way that he built Motown is something, for the books for sure. That was brought to me, and I looked at it, and it just, what it reminded me of was my childhood with the Muppets and what an influence that TV show had on my life musically. And so the project was brought in, and it's basically every episode of Motown Magic is a Motown song, and we worked the song throughout this one episode. And basically there was a life lesson, that was kind of created around the song title. And I was just like, this is fantastic. It's geared for the ages of 6 to 10, which that was my age when I found the Muppets. And it was one of those things that it was a no-brainer. So I got to do 36 episodes. I worked with like Don Was, and like these really great producers on that series. And I hope that it inspires kids the way that like the Muppets and shit like that inspired me growing up. Fraggle Rock. I mean, we were blessed with some like really cool.
We had great TV as kids, man.
Yeah, man, and like
I was all right with Fraggle Rock, but Zoobly Zoo scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah, well,
I didn't like that one. Ben Vereen.
Ben Vereen was terrifying as a lion.
I like Ben Vereen, but Fraggle Rock. I'll stick with that. No Zoobly Zoo.
But even like
I do feel bad though. Go ahead.
Jabberjaws. Remember that shark show? They had a band.
Yes.
It was like
everybody, especially in the 70s, everybody had a band.
Yeah.
The Scooby-Doo gang had a band.
Yeah.
Jabberjaw had a band.
I know.
Josie and the Pussycats. I mean, come on.
These millennials and Gen Zers don't know what the fuck they missed, man.
No.
And I have a son who's 20 years old, and I remember when he was growing up, I introduced him to not only the Muppets, but the Animaniacs. Because Animaniacs, they were always having fun, but there was always music, there was always songs, they were always teaching you stuff. And then they came along with what I thought was their version or their generation of the Animaniacs, which ended up being Phineas and Ferb. Yeah. Because they took the same route. They were always teaching you something. You were always having fun. There was always new songs,
Yeah, my daughter
love stuff like that.
My daughter was big into Phineas and Ferb, and then I started watching it, and then I was watching Phineas and Ferb, even though she grew out of it, But yeah, like stuff like that, that's why with that Motown project, it was so special, because it was like, hopefully, kids will see this and they'll dig into this catalog and they'll listen to the soundtrack, and it'll inspire somebody to write a song or to want to pick up a guitar and play.
Now I got to ask you this: as big as Berry Gordy is for Motown, have you ever heard of one of his other great successes, The Last Dragon?
Oh yeah, Bruce Leroy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's another one of those things that I grew up on. I loved movies like that, like They Live and the Berry Gordy's The Last Dragon and stuff like that.
What would be considered
movies like that are soul food to me.
Yeah, man. Actually, we had a koi pond at our house in LA, and I had a little turtle, and his name was Bruce Leroy. So yeah, that movie was great. I remember seeing it in the theaters when I was young,
I introduced my son to the star of that one. Was Timac, and we had seen him at a convention, like a comic book convention type thing. And I said, "Why don't you explain the movie to him?" And he starts trying to get all deep and philosophical and this and that. And then my son looks at me, and I look back at him. I was like, "Everyone in Harlem knows kung fu," and Timac just kind of goes,
"Yeah,
pretty much it."
Yeah, and like
so.
El DeBarge had the title song from that,
right? Yeah. And Prince's protege, I can't remember her name, but Prince's protege was the female lead in that one. She's unfortunately since passed.
Yeah, what was her name? Yeah, she's named in a Kanye song. But yeah, I know you're talking about.
Yeah.
So you're also, if I read it correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, because like I said, doing research was spotty. So you're also working on a branded vodka and some stuff like that. At least that was the last note.
Yeah, so for the eighth room, for me, like when I go into any things, I approach everything like I do bands. It's like you have to build a brand first, and put the hard work into building a brand, and then money starts to happen,
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was like right when we came in, everything was about the name, the logo, what that looked like, how that represented the inside of the club, how it made people feel. Like for me, the eighth room is like James Bond's living room. It's a really cool place. So like the octopus logo that we designed is very Spectre. And I wanted it to feel like when you pass by, it's like, oh, it's like Spectre's clubhouse or something, right? So early on, I had my friends at Ajax Turner, which is the Budweiser distributor here in Nashville. They came to me and proposed a beer, like started having our own eighth room lager. And I got to go through that whole process of trying all the different beers and finding the right one, finding the right mixture and whatever. And so we very early on branded our first beer. And then I became buddies with the guys that were manufacturing our beer. And so then we went into, because we were at the club, we had Liquid Death was like the water, the flat and the sparkling. So I went to our guys and I was like, can't we make a big canned water as well? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So then we went into our flat water, all branded and cool. And then we went into a sparkling water. And then after that, we went into a room spray, because my wife was obsessed with like boutique hotels. And when you walk into boutique hotels, they all have like this scent, right? So she went down to Miami and worked with some people on creating a scent for the eighth room, and we pump it through the HVAC system. So the eighth room has a very distinctive smell when you walk in. So we had the beer, we had the water, then we have like the room spray. And, so next is like moving into spirits, vodka. So that's kind of where we're at with that right now. But
I got an idea for you.
Please.
Everybody and their brothers got their own products out right now, and a lot of them have their own branded flour. The eighth room, it's right there. The eighth. That's what you sell it by too. The eighth.
we have our own branded flour even. I mean,
that's fantastic. My wife is going to love that idea.
Take that one. That one's yours for free. I'm saying that publicly.
Good one. I know the people too. Yeah.
See?
Yeah.
That's the important thing, is knowing the right people.
Great. That's a great idea, man. I tell you what, I'll give you 1% of every sale. How about that?
I'll take that. You're obviously a risk taker in your professional life. What is it that you have inside you think that makes you so willing and so confident to bet on yourself? Because most people just don't have it. They can't pull something deep down inside them.
Yeah, that kind of confidence doesn't come from nowhere. There's got to be something.
Well, when I was growing up, I think a lot of it just boils down to like my mom, like growing up, she just always drilled into my head. She was like, you're very special. You can do anything that you set your mind to. You can achieve it. And she's been a cheerleader and a supporter my whole life. So I think a lot of that just comes down to having a really good support system and wanting to go do something, and somebody really cheerleading you on, even though you're failing, and then picking you up when you fall down and telling you anything you set your mind to, you can do. I think along with that, I've just read a lot of books from a lot of great thinkers, you know. And listen, I'm highly dyslexic, so like for me to pick up a book and read it, it's got to be something I'm into. It's something I'm really gonna gain value from. But I picked up a lot of books on, you know, visualization and just mental strength, goal setting. And I think the vast majority of the confidence just comes from failure, you know, just real failure, and going like, okay, well, what did I learn? Well, I learned that I had my expectations set way too high for this, and thinking that it was going to happen in this amount of time when really it took that much time. Just, you know, picking yourself up and dusting off your boots and going like, okay, well, fuck it, that didn't work. Let's pivot. Let's try it. Let's go here. Let's try that. And, you know, I think the art of things not being easy makes for great success stories. You know, it's not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be hard. You know, I think though, the more that you align yourself, you know, to flow down the river instead of trying to row up it, I think the better off you are. But I don't know, man. I
hate to sound cliche, but I mean, can you know success without failure anymore?
No, I don't think there's any such thing.
I think that's part of the problem. We were talking earlier about, you know, today's generation. And part of the problem is they don't know how to fail. They were never taught how to fail. When we were growing up, it was go out there and do it. You either win, you lose. If you lose,
and when you lose, what did you learn from it? Yeah.
Yeah. You learn your lessons from it.
Somebody got a first place trophy, a second place trophy, and a really small third place trophy. Nobody else got nothing. You know,
at best, you got a little white ribbon that said honorable mention, or green ribbon that said honorable mention. Like,
yeah.
Maybe
you showed up.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, it's just a generation or a couple generations now of you know, being told everybody needs to be inclusive, everybody needs to be happy, everybody needs to feel like they've won, everybody needs to get a trophy, everybody needs to hold hands, and that's just not the way the world works. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of kids that have been set up for epic failure and real disappointment because they're not going out there celebrating their losses and aiming for what their next win might be. You know,
I mean, maybe not even celebrating it. They're not even going out and licking their own wounds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sometimes you have to know what it's like to fail. You have to know how much that sucks to make you want that success.
That's where you
just
get the drive
that
to
much
win.
More.
It's an absolute learning tool. You know, it's just a learning tool. And I think that there's just been too much coddling and hand holding for too long. I mean, I think that we're probably, you know, the Gen X kids are probably like the last of the Mohicans of guys that, you know, set up ramps out of a piece of board that your dad had in the garage with cinder blocks and jumped over your friends, you know. And
we were the last true savages. That's all there is to it.
Savages. Yeah. But, you know, like now we're having kids and, you know, most of us have kids, but, you know, I've raised my daughter to be an absolute brutal savage, you know, and to understand failure and to learn and to bet on herself and to have confidence. And, you know, I think that the tide is shifting now, and finally, because we've been in a decade of beta softness, and we got to get back into, you know, people taking risks and betting. Listen, man, the jobs are going to go away. I was watching this thing the other day, and it was like, you know, it was like a massive percentage, like 90% of kids coming out of college right now don't have jobs. You know, because their industry has completely been wiped out. So, you know, we have to set kids up and teach them that, you know, when you step out into the world, you're gonna have to figure this thing out on your own, and you need to have all the tools behind you, and then you also need to go out there and do things that create more tools for your toolbox. Because the set of shit that I gave to my daughter, it's a nice handbag of tools, but she's got to go out there and she's got to figure out how to fill that tool bag up and make herself even better, because that's what our parents did. My parents didn't know anything about going into the music business. They were like, well, I support you. Go figure it out. Go try,
But they were there for you.
100%.
And they were there to back you up. And if you failed, they were there at least for you to talk to, and that to me, that made all the difference for me.
Yeah.
Having that support system made all the difference.
100%.
It makes me think about the saying that I heard, hard times create hard men create soft times create hard men.
Right.
Hard men. And like basically right now we're living in hard times created by soft people, and it's time for a change. And I think a little bit of old school is what the world might need right now.
I think it's happening. I was just in London, and it was really interesting because London, since COVID, has just been brutally repressed. I mean, they can't fly the St. Michael, St. George, whatever the flag of England. Can't fly that. You get arrested. Can't say anything on social media. They'll arrest you. But there's an energy there right now that's just like, it's revolutionary. You can feel it. You can feel the shit is about to break. And that's when you get great music, you get great leaders, you get a next generation of badass motherfuckers that come out and swinging, and that's what we need. And I think that we're still in that phase of people waking up and figuring out that we've been hoodwinked for at least the last 20 years, and it's time to get back to to owning ourselves and making shit happen.
I gotta believe this feels like the early 60s right now. Like what the feeling in the early 60s, right before just everything went to shit and popped off. I feel like that's almost where we're at for us.
Yeah, and listen, I definitely felt that in England. Definitely. I mean, the energy was just like, ooh, like something is about to go down and I'm here for it. I mean, like the music is on fire over there. It's just like there's an energy that it's ready to break. And that's exciting to me.
Who would you say to keep your eye on over there music wise?
Man, the guy that I saw that I thought was like the coolest dude over there is a kid named Laurie Wright, LaurieWright is his name. He's just on fire. But I saw so many great musicians over there. It's hard to keep track. But
with everything you've done, and I mean you have a long list of accomplishments. What's next for you?
I mean, there's always something brewing, gentlemen, but that'll be saved for our next podcast visit.
All right. I'm okay with that.
I'm always up for that, man. I'm always up with that.
Yeah.
Jason, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media?
Yeah. So you can find us at the eighthroom.com, EIGHTH room.com. That'll have our links to all of our social media everywhere. And then I'm at It's Hollis, ITS Hollis, everywhere. You can find me easily.
Right on.
Okay. Yeah, man.
Well,
Tristan,
before we wrap,
man,
go ahead.
Thank you. This has been awesome. A lot of fun having a conversation with you guys.
This is what we do. We have conversations. That's all it is for us.
Yeah.
We like to learn. So
yeah.
I've always said I will never pretend like I know something when I don't, because one, it's the best way to make an ass out of yourself, and two, you're not learning a damn thing when you do.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So before we let you go, we have an end of podcast questionnaire that Kip's going to do. And we're not very good podcasters, so we don't know how to end this thing. So, you know, when you don't know how to do something, steal from someone who's already done it great. So in the memoriam of one Mr. James Lipton, Kip, why don't you take it away?
What is your favorite word?
Fuck.
What is your least favorite word?
No.
What sound or noise do you love?
Oh man, farts always make me laugh.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Oh man, my dog's farting. Because I know it's gonna be. I have bulldogs. It's gonna be terrible.
Oh God. Yeah. No, we got a pit over here. He's just as bad.
Like a human.
Creatively, what turns you on?
Energy.
Creatively, what turns you off?
Lack of energy.
All right, you kind of already answered this one, but what is your favorite curse word?
Oh, fuck. I'll go back and I'll re-answer number one. Probably have to.
No, don't. If that's your favorite word, screw that. Like, if you want to, you can. But if it's your favorite word, truly deep down,
that word.
Fuck it.
It has so many meanings. It has so many meanings. You know?
The single most versatile word in the English language is.
It really is.
Yeah.
You know, I think though to really kind of go back to that, I think my favorite word is freedom, because freedom is everything that you know guys like us that's what we're working for, is freedom. It's freedom to be able to do what it is that we want to do, to create, to help people, to build brands, to build bands, you know, financial freedom, just freedom to be able to do everything that it is that you want to do. And most people just, they can't seem to find the freedom that they need that unlocks the doors to be able to go out and do what it is that they really want to do, you know?
All right. And the final question, and this is one of my favorites, my personal favorites. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Welcome, my son.
I like it. I like it.
Bars around the corner.